Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another interview. I'm sorry about that earlier, some technical difficulties, but we are back. I have an again. I have an interview with he is current referee, NWA referee. He's refereed for New Japan Pro Wrestling, MLW, GCW, WrestleCade, and much, much more. He is no other than Jarrod Fritz. So I'm going to get him on here again, and then we will start up.
What's up, buddy?
All right. Nothing much. How are you doing?
Doing really, really well, man. Glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking your time out to do this.
No problem, man. Sorry for all the technical
All right.
difficulties.
It's fine. So I'll start off by asking you my first question. When did you start doing wrestling training, and what made you want to become a wrestler or wrestling referee?
So always been a fan since I was a little kid. Never thought it would actually be in my grasp. And I think it was late 2008, right as soon as I got back from working with the U.S. women's national soccer team in Beijing for the Olympics. The doctor that I was working with there started working with WWE, and he brought me in to do some massage therapy work because I'm a sports massage therapist. And I worked with them for a very brief amount of time, but then stopped working with them. So I wanted to figure out if there's another way that I could get involved in wrestling. And a buddy of mine introduced me to the local promotion here in South Carolina. And about 11 years ago, they wanted to kind of do a storyline with me. But in the state of South Carolina, you have to be trained and licensed. So they negotiated a deal with the trainer, and I started training just essentially to do a spot. But they said that if I was interested in trying to be a referee, I could definitely pursue that. And so I did that. And about a year later, I started doing actual wrestling. Injured my shoulder, and then decided after I rehabbed my shoulder that I'd put all my chips in on refereeing because I enjoyed it way more than I liked wrestling in the first place. So now I'm here.
Yeah. When you were younger, did you want to be a wrestler, or did you know that you wanted to be a referee?
Oh no, I wanted to be a wrestler 100%. Like, I mean, to be honest with you, as a kid, I never really paid attention to the referees. I think a lot of people when they watch wrestling, they don't really think about the referee very much more than just somebody who counts numbers. I run into that all the time. So yeah, I wanted to be a wrestler. I think everybody wants to be a wrestler. But then as I
Yeah.
learned more and more about refereeing, and how much of a vital part it is to everything that professional wrestling is, that drew me in a whole lot more because it's the most thankless job in professional wrestling. You know, we don't get any real accolades half the time, and not many people know what our responsibilities are, and it's very, very, very intricate. So I really like being able to do a lot more behind the scenes stuff because I'm not necessarily one for limelight. I don't like to be in the big spotlight type of thing, but I like helping out wherever I can, and refereeing allows me to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Did you watch wrestling as a kid? If so, who was your favorite wrestler growing up, and who did you like try mimicking or and such?
Uh, yeah, so my mom never wanted me to watch it. She always thought it was far too dangerous. And thankfully, my really cool Uncle John let me watch wrestling in his little tiny TV. He had one of those little like 7-inch TVs. So I was watching like the old school NWA stuff, old school like Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair type of stuff. And I was really attracted to that, but it wasn't until I saw The Ultimate Warrior for the first time that I was really just like blown away by how much of it was a comic book character come to life realistically. And then shortly after that, Papa Shango came onto the it came onto the scene, and I was really captivated by that because again, you had like a superhero and a supervillain, and it was very cartoony, and it was something that really captivated me. And then as I started getting older and I started realizing that I really liked the technical aspects of it, it was people like Eddie Guerrero and Bret Hart that really, really got me like sucked into the storylines and the drama aspect of it. Um, And I think, man, I probably try to copy anybody that I could see do a cool move. My poor little brother and little sister were the ones that had to take all the grunt of everything. So, yeah.
Yeah. If you could guest train with any referee, who would that be?
Oh, man. Well, thankfully, I've had the privilege to work with Brian Hebner, probably one of the best referees of all time, and he has taught me a lot. And I'm still learning from him to this day. I will always ask him to look over my matches and give me any critique and any feedback. So, I mean, without a doubt, he's one of the best. Thankfully, I've gotten
Yeah.
feedback from like Mike Chioda before. Even Earl Hebner has given me a little bit of feedback before. Um, Honestly, one of the ones that I grew up watching that I really like that I think gets underappreciated a lot is Randy Anderson, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But that would have been somebody really cool to like pick their brain a little bit, and just try to get a little bit more feedback. John Cone is one of the really good ones from WWE that I'd like to pick his brain as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Who would you say is your favorite wrestler nowadays to watch and also referee?
Oh man. Gosh, that's really hard. I mean, there's so many good ones out there and so many different, volumes and ranges. And to be honest
Yeah.
with you, I absolutely love working with Matt Cardona. He's got such a great mind for the business, and he utilizes the referee for exactly what the referees are utilized for. He understands the psychology of a referee. There's a lot of wrestlers these days that don't understand the actual psychology of a referee. So Matt's been great to work with. Always makes it thoroughly enjoyable anytime I get an opportunity to work with him,
Yeah.
and he's killing it.
Yeah, he definitely is. Who are your wrestling referee and just wrestling trainers in general?
So I was trained by a guy named Bob Keller out of the Swansea, South Carolina area. Bob has probably one of the most in-depth minds for the psychology of wrestling. He's not really one of the ones that teaches you a lot of cool moves or really big flashy type of things as much as he goes over the concepts of psychology, storytelling, getting the audience to be involved, and really utilizing the whole space of the ring to create the show that we want to do. Bob's also responsible for training John Schuyler, who's currently with TNA, and so by proxy, I was
Oh,
also trained by
yeah.
John Schuyler as well. So the both of them have really, really, really helped me a tremendous amount as far as my base training. Now, thankfully, like I said before, I've had additional training from people like Brian Hebner, Gangrel, Trevor Murdoch, Aaron Stevens have all given me really, really good information. And so, I'm thankful for any opportunity that I get to learn as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, most definitely. When you went into training, did you know that you were training to become a wrestler, or did you know that you were training to become a referee?
As I said before, when I first started training, I was literally just learning how to take a bump because they wanted to utilize me for a spot in a storyline for the local promotion. So I really had no idea that I was actually going to do anything more than just that one spot. And then when the opportunity was presented to me to do refereeing, I started pursuing that. And then, like I said, probably about 6 or 7 months into it, the guy who was training me said, you have a lot of athleticism, you have a lot of ability. Have you ever thought, hey, would you like to actually wrestle? And so I gave that a shot. I enjoyed it for the time that it was, but I really had more of a desire to referee. I felt like I could provide more to professional wrestling as a referee than I could as a
Yeah.
wrestler. There's far more wrestlers out there that are way better and way more talented than I am. So I wanted to give that to them and really focus because particularly in the area that I was at the time, there wasn't a tremendous amount of referees that were all that great. So I really wanted to try to kind of run down that avenue a whole lot, and it's really taken me far, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. And you have the least advantage of getting injured. So,
I still get injured, but yes, the least advantage of it.
yeah. Was anybody who inspired you, family and wrestling wise, to get into wrestling?
Well, my wife was very encouraging of it. She doesn't always like all the travel, but she is one of the ones that really, um, as the opportunity was presented to me, she really encouraged me because she knew it was something that I kind of wanted to do from childhood. You know, again, my mom wasn't the greatest fan of it at first because she really didn't understand it, but moms are always going to be protective of us and everything like that. And then my stepsons, once they realized like what I did and everything, they thought it was super cool. And when my oldest was in high school, he had a really good friend that used to watch me on NW, like the early times in NWA and everything. He's like, "Oh my god, like that's Mark's dad, like that's so cool." So it's just really cool to kind of get those accolades and realize that you have some sort of influence on people.
Yeah, for sure. Out of all the matches you have refereed, which one do you think has gone the most violent and the main injury that you've seen in the match?
So there was one. So as far as violence goes, probably Camille versus Natalia at NWA 75 night one. It was a no limits match. Anything goes anywhere, falls count anywhere. Super intense. Some of the shots in that, like pretty scary to be a part of. As far as injuries go, thankfully there really hasn't been anything on any of the major levels that I've really had to deal with. On the indie level, I had to be a part of. I didn't have to be a part. I was part of a match where somebody went to just basically go do a simple elbow drop off the top, and unfortunately just land the wrong way, and his arm just cracked right in the middle. And so, thankfully, it wasn't a compound fracture, but it was still, kind of all over the place, which was pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't thankfully don't do like a lot of like death matches or anything where there's just like a severe amount of blood. Although uh, I don't know how many years ago it was for a company called PWX. It was John Schuyler versus Corey Hollis in a quote unsanctioned match that got pretty bloody and pretty gnarly. That was a fun one. So
Were you ever in any type of school or amateur wrestling as a kid?
yeah, I wrestled in high school. At the time, actually, my dad was stationed in Japan, so I did 2 years of folk style. Well, technically, it was freestyle wrestling in Japan, and then when I moved back here stateside, I switched into more of the traditional folk style wrestling. So I had that a little bit as a background, but I never went much past high school. I wish I was able to have done it in middle school, but just didn't really have the opportunity.
Yeah. What do you consider to be your weakness in wrestling as a referee?
That's a good question. Probably my over obsession with details. I really I think I overthink things sometimes when I approach the wrestlers about it, asking them questions about would you prefer me to be in this spot or does this make more sense than that? Because in my head I'm like I really want it to come across as the best visual that I possibly can to help with the story. So sometimes I'll just really kind of beat myself up about overthinking just the smallest little things. Now that could be an advantage because it could add more to the actual story. But at the same time, I know sometimes I get worked up about the dumbest little things. So, and I forget to have fun sometimes. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. What do you consider a strength?
I think honestly, if I have to really think about it, it's my confidence in what I do. Um, I can tell when I watch myself and when other people watch that I'm really invested in what I'm doing there, and it's I want to make it as believable as possible. Like we all know the concept
Yep.
of kayfabe, and it's dead. You know, so we're not trying to trick people to try to make them think that it's real. But what I want people to do is I want people to kind of walk away and go, you know, I thought that was supposed to be, staged, but it seemed like it could have been real. And so like I really enjoy pulling out as much emotion from people as I possibly can. So um, I've gotten a lot of good feedback about that. So I would say that that would probably be one of my biggest strengths with that. That and basic organization of the whole entire match.
Yeah, most definitely. Is it hard traveling from show to show? And what is the worst thing about traveling?
The worst thing about traveling is that I'm OCD and I just want to get wherever I'm going, and I hate like the in between stuff because unfortunately, in wrestling, a lot of people will carpool together, but oftentimes when I'm traveling, I don't travel with a lot of people, just because I'm either not on the show or where I live. There's not a lot of people that are kind of coming out of that area, so I don't get that opportunity to really travel with a lot of people. So I just want to get from point A to point B as fast as I possibly can. But it can be,
Yeah.
pretty daunting. Next weekend I'll be gone from Friday afternoon till Sunday evening nonstop. I won't be back home, and that's challenging when I have a wife at home and everything, and I want to be here with her. But some of the sacrifice of professional wrestling.
Hmm. As a wrestler, who was your first opponent in front of a crowd, and how did you feel going into that first match?
Absolutely terrified. I'm about to walk in front of people in underwear, and that's it. Like, I mean, I think everybody can kind of relate to that. My first opponent was a guy named Tracer X, who the way that I was trained was super old school, very simple, very basic headlock, hip toss, arm drag, uh, cover, pin, lock up. Super simple, super easy. And he was a big time high flyer that wanted to do monkey flips and this and that. And I was put in the position of a heel and he was a baby face. He had, I want to say it was about a year and a half experience on top of me. So by proxy, I was kind of giving it to him as far as, hey, call the match and I'm in there with it. And after the first sequence, we both kind of got lost. So we just essentially called it in the ring. And I'll have to send you, if you shoot me a message, I'll send you a copy of it. It's on YouTube still somewhere. It's uh, kind of embarrassing to watch, but it was a good time nonetheless.
What outcome did you expect to see from the crowd in your first match?
I don't think I really had an expectation per se. Um, I just didn't want to mess up. Like, I mean, I think we all don't want to mess up. But the secret is the crowd doesn't know that you messed up until you tell them that you messed up. So, um, I mean, I was heel and they hated me, which was good. So, I mean, I was glad that I got that reaction.
Yeah. What about what was it like from the change of from being a wrestler to a referee? What was that change like?
Honestly, just because of the way that I was trained, there wasn't a lot of indifference, if you will, because at one point I was actually refereeing shows and working the same show underneath a hood. So, I could switch just like that. It's just a mental thing. Um, there are times during that time where I got to think about more of the actual wrestling than I did of the refereeing. So that had to switch back and forth every once in a while. But other than that, it wasn't too difficult.
Yeah. If you could and referee a match with somebody that has passed away, who would that be and why?
Eddie Guerrero, easily, just because I think he's probably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He could be the biggest babyface, and then the very next day be the worst heel that everybody hated. His technical abilities were just uncanny, and his ability to suck the crowd in was just awesome. And just to be a part of any type of that energy would be incredible.
Most definitely. Who in for a wrestler?
Say that one more time for me. I think you broke up there for just a minute. Say that one more time.
Who is or was your top dream opponent as a wrestler?
Oh shoot, Eddie Guerrero. I think he's honestly like he tops the list. Like, I mean, there's so many people that I would love to absolutely work. I mean, there's just so many good people out there, but Eddie just had something about him that was freaking awesome. If I could go back today and just wrestle one person that's out there today, honestly, that's still active, I would say probably Edge or Adam Copeland, whatever we're calling him, these days, just because, again, he's very much like Eddie. He has the ability to be the biggest babyface and the worst heel and captivate that crowd.
For sure. What would you narrow down to your three top favorite matches you refereed in your career?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let's see. So I would say the top would definitely have to be, there was a match between Serpentico and Sir Rios Badu, or Jay Rios, back, I don't know how many years ago, but it was with PWX. It was a no holds bar fight, and they just had so much emotion in the match that once the match was over, walking Jay back to the ring, or back to the locker room, I started literally just crying, and I had no idea why I was crying, and it was just, there was a lot of emotion in it, and that'll still probably always top, because that was the first time that I ever really truly experienced that type of feel. Um, Number two would probably have to be FTR versus Rock and Roll Express, at the Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium for Big Time Wrestling. That was January of
Yeah,
2020, right before the pandemic happened. Um, and that place was packed to the gills, and the energy was just unreal. And that was actually the first time that I got to work with FTR, which was awesome. Um, you know, the first time that I got to work with Mark and Jay Briscoe versus La Rebellion at NWA, it was just a TV taping show, so it wasn't a really big like fanfare type of thing. But the amount of energy and emotion that was in that one single match was really badass. So that would probably have to come in at number three. Um, and then probably honorable mention would have to be that Natalia Markova versus Camille match at NWA 75.
yeah, most definitely. Do you usually get along slash become friends with most of the guys you get to work with in the ring?
Um, you know, I would say that I have a friendly disposition. I'm not trying to make, best friends or anything like that, but I try to be as agreeable and as friendly as possible, because they have to trust you just as much as you have to trust them, because the safety is in my hands of everybody, because that's the number one responsibility of a referee, is the safety of everybody in the ring. So they have to trust you and you have to trust them. So, you want to make sure that you create some sort of a healthy relationship between them. I don't think I've really truly had any problems with anybody realistically, even people that I don't, necessarily agree with past actions or whatever. I'm still there to do business, and I want to be a professional, and I want to make the show be as good as it possibly can.
Yep. So, say if you were the referee for this match and you could make a Survivor Series match, including four wrestlers for, I'll say, each team. Which four wrestlers would you choose for each Survivor Series team?
Oh, dude. I think that would probably take me a year to figure out collectively. Are we talking about like throughout all history, or are we just talking about like current workers?
Current workers.
All right. Oh man. Let's see. Um, let's put FTR on one side. Um, let's put the Usos on one side. On the same side as FTR, we'll put Adam Copeland. On the same side as the Usos, we will put, man, can't even think like that awesomely. With the Usos, they're feuding right now, so why not? Let's put Eddie Kingston on that side. I think that'd be a good pull on that, right? Um, then with FTR and Adam Copeland, we'll put
Yeah.
Speedball Mike Bailey, and then we'll finish it out with Matt Cardona. Why not? Sounds like it'd be a fun match.
Did you answer that all the way?
Yeah, yeah. I think we got frozen up there. I think I went with FTR, Adam Copeland, and Speedball Mike Bailey on one side, and then on the opposite side we had Eddie Kingston, uh, Matt Cardona, and the Usos.
All right. Yeah, that would be good. Would you rather referee a street fight or a death match?
Street fight, easily. Yeah, I'm not a big deathmatch type of guy. I think it's just a little too much for me. I I don't understand it. I don't necessarily have anything against it. I just don't understand it as much to put enough of my emotion into it to really give it what it's worth. Whereas a street fight is something that I can see as something that would actually happen, and I can help create emotion for that.
Yeah. Would you rather now referee a blindfolded match, handcuffed to your opponent match, or a dog collar?
Let's see. So I've done a dog collar match. That was pretty interesting. Blindfolded match, I think, would be a little too um, flat, if you will. So let's go with the handcuff match. I think that's something that would be kind of interesting to do.
Yeah. Is there any piece of merch that you have or had that is sold out pretty quickly?
Uh, my latest 8x10s seem to be fairly popular. Thankfully, Joe Kazana at Joe Kazana Promotions was able to hook me up with a cool graphic designer that made it look really cool. But I also have some trading cards that actually have a piece of the very first shirt that I ever wore in it. That the ones that I all had for myself actually sold out completely. And thankfully, I was able to go back to the guy who had originally ordered them, and he had kept a portion of them. So I was able to buy some of those back from him, and now I've got them for sale. So collectible history there, if anybody's ever interested.
Yeah. Is there any time a fan has seen you in public and got like super surprised and or excited?
No, I don't think there's anybody that's ever gotten like really super surprised. Um, More or less, I get the people that kind of go, "You look semi-familiar. How do I know you?" And I do a lot of things in the community. And they'll be like, no, 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 you're the referee guy. So nobody's ever really gotten starstruck or anything, which is good because I don't necessarily like that kind of stuff. But it is nice to be noticed. You know, I'm interested to see if anything changes now that today we went live on the CW app, so we'll have a little more nationwide notoriety.
Yeah. Out of all the out of all the matches you have refereed, which one do you think sparked your career to become as big as you are now?
Well, first and foremost, I wouldn't think that I'm very big right now, as much as I have the ability to work with people. Um, as far as any one that really like sparked a particular interest, that's a really good question. I don't think there was ever really truly honestly a pivotal moment, as much as maybe the match between Camille and Kylan King at Always Ready pay-per-view. I think that may have been one that I think people really saw the abilities that I was honestly capable for. Um, but that's a really good question. I never really thought about that one. It's a cool one. I'll have to
Yeah.
think about it a little bit more.
What is the story of how you got scouted out by the NWA to become an official NWA referee, and what was your reaction?
um, well, thankfully, at the time when NWA Power first came on in its first season, I had somebody that I knew who was working talent relations at the time. So I reached out to them and I said, "Hey, where do I need to send my resume? Who do I need to talk to if there's any type of an opportunity?" And they had responded to me that there was really no opportunity at the time. They were kind of locked in on the roster that they had, but that I could send my resume over and they would peruse it. Um, Several months later, I got the contact, and they said, "Hey, listen, we actually want to bring you in for the Into the Fire pay per view as a massage therapist in the locker room because we know that you have that ability and it could add value to the locker room." And then the very next day at the tapings, we'll see about giving you an opportunity to ref and see if it's something that we can work with. Um, and surprisingly enough, the night of the pay per view, I'm back there doing massage, and they come up to me and they're like, "Hey, we're going to give you a match tonight, live pay per view, first pay per view for NWA ever. First time me ever working with them. First, the two people that I was working with in the match I'd never worked with before, so it was scary as hell, but it was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. How did you feel going into that first match for NWA on big television?
Terrified, terrified. you know, like I really never worked with them, so I didn't really know their style. I didn't know what they wanted out of me particularly, and like I said, I didn't know the people who I was working with. Thankfully, they were some of the most talented women I've ever worked with. It was Thunder Rosa and Tasha Steeles, and it was a great little match. Again, I was very nervous because I'd never done any type of studio work. So, I have to be aware of so many more cameras and not getting in the way. And then, of course, in front of a live studio audience being broadcast nationwide or actually internationally, realistically, first time working with them. And it was great. It ended up working out really well.
Yeah. So if you got asked all at the same time by WWE, AEW, Impact, TN or slash TNA, New Japan, MLW, or GCW to become an official referee, but you could only choose one, which one would you choose to sign with?
Man, I mean that's realistically a very very difficult question, um, because I think everybody likes the idea of WWE, and I would love to learn from some of the greatest people in the wrestling world. Um, TNA is great; they have a really good product. Um, you know, I've been really attracted to New Japan for a while. It's just such a different style. It ends up being more intense and more technical, which is the style that I like. And it's got a very cool like crowd fan base that's just very very unique. and I think they get underappreciated sometimes. And I've always been a big fan of like the underdogs. So yeah, I don't know. I think I might go with New Japan. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. What was it like getting to work with New Japan Pro Wrestling? That since you refereed a couple of times and worked with them.
Very awesome. Like they're very organized, and I lived in Japan for 3 years, so I learned a lot about the Japanese culture. Um, so it was really cool to be a part of that again, as far as the Japanese culture goes, and just learning a different style. It's very similar, pro wrestling is pro wrestling, but it just had a very unique spin to it that I liked. And they were very friendly, very welcoming, which was awesome.
Who's your favorite horror character, and what is your favorite horror movie?
Oh, wow. That's more my wife's department. She loves that kind of stuff. Um, Man, that's a good question. I don't know if I really have one. I mean, like, granted, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. I think that one, like the original Nightmare on Elm Street, just the idea that your dreams could kill you. I think that would probably have to top the list for me. I think one of my favorite horror movies, though, that I think not a lot of people are aware of, is a horror movie called Hell House LLC. Very low budget film, but it's pretty intense for what it is.